ask that you give your name and who you're with, just so we know. You don't have to do it every time, but at least the first time for us, please. There will be a possibility for interviews afterwards as well, so just keep that in mind. With that, we'll start with Incident Commander Aaron Grecian.
Well, good afternoon and buenos tardes, telemundo viewers out there. My name is Aaron Grazier. I'm the Type 3 Incident Commander on pipeline fire. We'll start with setting up the map a little bit to kind of orient everyone to what's out there and where the fire is. So this darker gray shading is the tunnel fire from about 6 weeks ago. The lighter gray shading is the Schultz fire scar from about 13, 15 years ago. And the colors you see on the map are the fire progress from the pipeline and the haywire fire. 89, Highway 89 runs kind of right through the middle of this. And then we have the communities of Timberline and Doney Park. So progress for today, really based on last night's operations, some very successful burnout operations last night, and then very high winds today that pushed this fire primarily to the north and to the east, skirting the tunnel fire scar. We're involved in heavy structure protection in the communities kind of south of Timberline. A lot of resources in there. Continuing to hold and improve, kind of coming around to the west. And then this fire has made some significant progress into the Chena Peaks wilderness area. It's coming back around to the east. Fairly good progress with fire growth to the northeast, and then up onto O'Leary Peak. So values at risk here are the community, Timberline, Doney Park, Chena Peaks wilderness area, and the watershed, and the Rio de Flag, tribal lands and cultural sites to the north, and of course, firefighter and public safety. A lot of today's operations were adjusting the evacuations. On a day like today, with winds doing what they were doing, with the fuels conditions we have, getting people out of the way. Number one value at risk is the public that we serve. Getting folks out of the way. We try to do that early. We try to do that in as much coordination with our cooperators, primarily Coconino County Sheriff's Office, other law enforcement agencies, and other community groups involved. We've adjusted those several times today, and we will continue to revisit. I want to send a big thanks out to incoming California Team 15, the incoming Type 2 Incident Management Team, for their coordination and integration with the Type 3 team today. It's been hugely successful. We have different levels of complexity and management for a reason. Incoming Type 2 team is going to be vital in the kind of the next phase of this fire. Also want to send out heartfelt thanks to the community that has supported us throughout this. I know coming off the tunnel fire and the impacts of that, this was unwelcome. However, please rest assured that there are lots of men and women out there standing guard tonight and will continue to protect this community. Brady, anything else?
You want to touch base on the haywire? No.
Sure. Okay. The haywire and the double fire. So time was reported 6 to 11 miles to the east. Two fires. The cause of those is still under investigation. However, most probably lightning strike holdovers from several days ago. Reported as 2 fires that grew together. That is now the haywire fire. It is being managed separately from this incident, however, will be incorporated with the incoming incident management team. We have several resources out here on the haywire fire. Really remote, tough access for rolling stock engines primarily. Maybe another thing that hampered operations today was due to high winds, really no air assets could fly safely today. We don't count on air assets to be successful. There are always people on the ground, regardless, whether we have air or not. However, can certainly buy us some tactical and operational advantage when we have that. So in a day like today, when we do not have that, we reprioritize a little bit. And today, number one was getting folks out of the way, really paying attention to the evacuations, making sure we're doing safe and timely evacuations, and really trying to continue to hold and protect those values at risk.
Thank you, Aaron. So right now we'll have Supervisor Horseman come on up.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you all. First, as Chair of the Board of Supervisors, and on behalf of Coconino County, we want to send our support and condolences to all those in our community who have been impacted by these fires. Many of our residents have not only been impacted now, but this is the second time they've been impacted by a fire in just the last month. And we all have felt the pain of watching our beautiful mountain burn. We acknowledge what an incredibly difficult time this is for those that have been evacuated and for those whose homes have been threatened. I also want to thank our first responders, CCSO, the incident manager, the fire crew for their tireless efforts of fighting not one, but now 3 fires that are threatening our community. These fires have been fueled by high winds, heat, and very dry conditions. The county has deployed all available resources and personnel and continues to monitor these 3 fires burning near Flagstaff, Pipeline, the Haywire, and the Double Fire, which you've just heard a lot about. The Emergency Operations Center opened at 2 p.m. yesterday to respond to the Pipeline fire and has expanded its focus to Haywire and Double Fires. We are also in coordination with the City of Flagstaff, State of Arizona, our federal and our tribal partners. President Jonathan Nez and his staff have offered assistance from the Navajo Nation, and they are also closely monitoring this situation. We want to thank them all for their support, and we want to especially acknowledge our Senators Sinema and Kelly, our Congressman Tom O'Halloran, who have once again been here with us and been supported during our time of crisis. Thank you all for what you do and are continuing to do to help us here in Coconino County. Now I want to quickly share some information on the resources that Coconino County is offering for those in need. The American Red Cross has again set up an evacuation shelter at Sanawa Middle School at 3950 East Butler Avenue here in Flagstaff for those that have been evacuated. For those that need a place to house their household pets, also please contact Coconino Humane Association at 3501 East Butler Avenue in Flagstaff. Some of you may have heard High Country Humane was evacuated again since they also were in the evacuation area. You can also take your horses, your goats, sheep, pigs, chickens, and larger animals to Fort Tuthill County Stables. The stables, remember, are self-service. You are responsible for all services related to your animals, including feeding and watering. They ask that you bring cages for smaller livestock and water troughs, small water troughs, for your livestock staying at Fort Tuthill. We have also set up a call center to answer questions and to field resources. The Fire Call Center for Coconino County is 928-679-8525. We ask our residents to remain vigilant, stay tuned to Coconino County emergency notifications and announcements via social media channels, and cooperate and abide by all evacuation orders. We are here to keep you safe. A website has also been set up for this event, which can be accessed by going to coconino.az.gov and by clicking on the emergency alert banner at the top of the page. This will give you immediate access to updated information on pipeline, hay fire, and the double fire. The county is updating this information as it becomes available. It is the latest information. It is factual information. Please avail yourself to our county website. Unfortunately, many of you I've seen before because we have been here before. But together, we will get through this. Together, this is another situation of neighbors helping neighbors, and we, the county, are here to help, and that we shall get through this. So thank you so much, and I'm sure we will see you again, and we'll keep you up to date on further information. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Horseman. Now we'll hear from the Sheriff's Office, Chief Brett Axland.
Good afternoon, everybody. Brad Axland, I'm the Chief Deputy for the Coconino County Sheriff's Office. Early yesterday morning, around 11 o'clock, the Sheriff's Office received a report of a fire just off of Snowball Road near the pipeline area, which is a very popular area for recreationalists and campers. At that time, we responded with several deputies who were close in the area, and they were able to make a traffic stop on a suspicious vehicle that was reported possibly related to starting this fire. At that point in time, deputies interviewed the subject and decided to contact the United States Forest Service for a law enforcement officer to be able to come in and take over that investigation due to the fire related on Forest Service managed land. As the fire progressed from the area that it was reported in, the Sheriff's Office put out a go evacuation status for the Schultz Pass Road area, an area frequented by camping and recreation from the Fort Valley area to the Schultz Pass area. At that point, we set a set status for the Eldon Lookout Road residences. Later in the afternoon, as the fire progressed through the Schultz Pass, Timberline, and Fernwood communities, and Walpocky trails were also placed on set. The fire at that point appeared to be following the trajectory of the tunnel fire from less than 2 months ago. We increased the evacuation status to go as the fire closed in on the communities. As Timberline was put in go, Donny Park was placed on set. With assistance of our Coconino County Public Works Department, we were able to quickly close all the roads leading into the fire danger areas, and deputies were able to provide escorts for those needing emergency to their houses for their needs. We maintained security throughout the night and received no reports of suspicious activity within the evacuated areas. Early this morning, we received a report of a new fire, the hay fire, which led to us to post an evacuation order in the area of Alpine Ranchos and the Moon Crater areas off of Loop Road. As the pipeline fire progressed north, we completed additional evacuations in the areas along North Highway 89 to Sacred Mountain Trading Post. The fire then entered the Timberline community, causing Donny Park north of Silver Saddle to go on evacuation. So currently on evacuation status, we have the communities of Highway 89 north to Sacred Mountain Trading Post, Timberline, Fernwood, Wapaki Trails, Johnson Ranch, and Donny Park north of Silver Saddle Road. Areas currently on set are North Highway 89 from Sacred Mountain to Sonagua Trading Post, Donny Park south of Silver Saddle to Townsend Winona Road, neighborhoods off of Eldon Lookout Road. Now, these are just the areas in the unincorporated area of Coconino County. They do not include the city of Flagstaff. Numbers as far as those that have been evacuated, and these are numbers in households, not individuals. For the pipeline fire, we have 2,195 households in go status and 1,584 households in set status. For the haywire fire, we have 281 in go and 57 in set. We could not do our jobs or make such an effective response to this without mentioning some of our partners that responded to this with us. Coconino County Public Works, for their assistance with traffic control and road closures, were an incredible help to us in providing for that safety. Along with them, the Flagstaff Police Department, Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, Navajo County Sheriff's Office, for their help in our security patrols. Once we evacuate a community, at that point in time, we're responsible for the security, and we'll do so on a full-time basis. Arizona Game and Fish, National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service for their assistance in the initial response and evacuations, and Coconino County Emergency Management for their assistance in very timely emergency notifications to our community. Our search and rescue volunteers were enacted along with our community emergency response team and patrol volunteers, not to mention all the support personnel from the Sheriff's Office and county as well. I just want to say, from being out in the field, watching the operations going on, the Forest Service and Summit Fire fighting crews, along with all their partnerships, are doing a phenomenal job at fighting this fire and protecting our people. We understand the incredible difficulties evacuation causes to the lives of those in our communities. We also have staff members and first responders in the evacuation areas, especially after going through the tunnel fire less than 2 months ago. Many of these people were the same ones that were evacuated in the past. We will open up the evacuation areas as soon as it is safe to do so and continue to communicate any updates through our social media and website networks. We don't make evacuation notices on an island. We take the advice and the recommendations from our fire service professionals. They know, and they are the best at what they do. To all of our county residents, please be ready and prepare, as emergencies can come anytime. This is a perfect example of that. I want to thank everybody that lives in our communities. Thank you to the media for helping us get this message out, for your patience and your support in what we had to do. This is a very tough time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Axland. Now we'll hear from Congressman O'Halloran.
Good evening, everybody. To the residents of the area, I say thank you for all your cooperation with the first responders when this first started. It was imperative that it was done orderly and under conditions that were not exactly the best conditions to live under. To the first responders and the forest fires, so thank you so much. Sheriff, thank you so much. Type 3 team, you did an outstanding job. About 11 or 11:30 yesterday, I looked out my front window and saw smoke in the air 80 miles away. My district director called me up and said there's a fire up in Flagstaff, and the winds are around 50 miles an hour. I didn't have to know much more other than the fact that we had to get there. But what I want to talk about is what occurred here when I got here. I went to the Coconino National Forest parking lot of the supervisors' offices, and it was almost empty at 5 o'clock at night. Went in and had a briefing from the supervisor and the Type 3 team, and it took about a half hour. As I left, now mind you, the Type 2 team hadn't been notified until early afternoon. I saw trucks coming in from San Diego and other parts of California that early, and they had already scheduled a meeting for 8 o'clock at night. We went out to the scene of the evacuations, and we found an orderly evacuation process that was put together by all the people that the deputy mentioned, and it was so orderly that I couldn't believe it. And having been a first responder in my former life, I felt proud to know that we had such dedicated servants that were helping the people of this area. The county was there, the state was there, the local police departments were there, fire departments were coming in from all over this state and the Southwest. By the time I got back to the supervisor's office, around 8 o'clock at night, the parking lot was full. Type 3 team gave a discussion on the status of the current fire, and the room was, half the room was Type 2 people. They had come in by 8 o'clock at night from all over to help with this fire, and eventually tonight, I believe they're going to be able to take over with the Type 3 team still there working with them. And then later on in the evening, we were in this building, and the Type 2, some of the Type 1 team were here, helping with the Type 3 and the Type 2 team to be able to coordinate to get ready for today. These things just don't happen by accident. When we look out and see how professional this is done, the expertise that it takes, and the amount of information that's needed to fight these fires, as always, we look at our firefighters and our first responders and say, thank you, before the fire, during the fire, and after the fire. But we also have to remember that there's a process that goes on, and we have some of the top incident teams in the world that fight these fires. And we should make sure that we recognize that time and time again. So thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Congressman O'Halloran. So we're going to go into our question and answer period. What I would ask for you to do is try to group your questions kind of in the order of the speakers so that we don't have to have them coming up and down separately a lot. That may happen here just a little bit, but try to group your questions at least at the beginning towards our incident commander and operations and things like that. So any questions about the fire itself? Actually, Dave, let's start from the front here.
Yeah, thanks. Dave Zorn with CAF Radio here in Flagstaff. Earlier this afternoon, there was reports out there that there were some spot fires in the timberline area. I got out there with a few others, and we saw everybody kind of like mobilizing and going to specific areas. Can you kind of go over kind of what happened in that area if we had that going on there in timberline?
Yeah, sure, Dave. Thanks for the question. I'll try to add a little meat to that bone of what I was talking about earlier. So, again, last night, very successful burnout operation to protect this community. We knew that was going to be our focus this morning. We knew that when we got up this morning after some very short sleep, with a bunch more resources that came in overnight, that was going to be the priority area. We knew the winds were coming, and we assigned resources based on need around the rest of the fire. So again, universal truth, never enough time or resources. The consequence of losing any other part of the fire would have been equally as dire. So as we went through the planning process of making risk-based decisions, trying to find the places that we could be the most successful, really this corner came to light. And again, under the conditions that we had today, every potential fire source was a problem today. And every potential unburned area was receptive to fire today. So that puts us in an interesting situation of trying to, again, assign resources the best we can based on that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
In the back there in the black jacket.
Yeah, so we're expecting high winds again tomorrow. What exactly are you guys going to be able to do over the coming days as these winds are likely still going to be some of what we saw today?
So I'm sorry, what's your name?
Michael Dell.
Michael, thank you, Michael. So most updated weather from the Weather Service are actually some moderating winds tomorrow. We've just gotten back from kind of the last strategy and tactics meeting with the incoming California Team 15 Type 2 team. We're planning on, again, a heavy resource commitment tomorrow, and planning on a lot of aircraft use tomorrow also. We're going to continue
to focus on the values at risk. If we need to change the evacuation orders to get our most valuable resource, the people of this community, out of the way, that is what we're gonna do. And we're gonna look for opportunities to be successful to stop this where we can.
So following up on that, similar to how you guys focus on the timberline area down there, where's probably gonna be that next kind of major focus for you guys over the next day?
We're not out of the woods down here, okay? This is still gonna be a very heavy resource commitment here. As this fire moves to the north, there are communities, Sacred Mountain Trading Post to the north, the Wapaki National Monument to the north, and of course, all the cultural sites. Some of the densest cultural sites anywhere in the southwest of Dead Man's Wash. We know how important that is to our tribal members that live in this community, and certainly our tribal cooperators. So, we're going to try to focus on where we can be the most successful, assuming the appropriate risk.
And the last one for me here is, I know the wind has really been pushing off to the northeast. Is that some way that you want the wind to go right now towards that northeast area? I know there's always a limit, there's always extremes, but if you guys are really trying to go one way.
Well, good thing about winds that are this high is we know where it's going. It ain't gonna go anywhere else. So that gives us some planning opportunity to say, okay, we know where it's gonna go. It's gonna go out here, right? So there's an upside to that. We would rather probably not have that, but you know, there is an upside from a planning process.
In the back in the gray.
Yeah, hey, Jordan Bonke, ABC 15. I actually wanted to ask about containment. It could be discouraging for some people to see 0% containment. I want to know your definition of it, of what would constitute some of these resources to contain it, and then, you know, what you have to see to lift some of these evacuation orders.
Sure, Jordan. Great question. It's always a little bit of a tricky issue for us. We have kind of some technical language that we use in the fire world to talk about containment and control. I think the important thing is we want to be able to say that the values that we're there to protect are truly protected. And we don't want to walk away from that inadvisedly. So those numbers of containment and control, they don't just come out of the air. We spend a lot of time talking about what those percentages are, whether they're very accurate or not. And in a day like today, where the conditions that no one has any control over can push this in any way, we would be irresponsible to have anything other than hyper-accurate numbers on that. So I understand it's frustrating. Believe me, it's frustrating for us. You know, we want to show containment. We want to do that, but we want to make sure that that means something.
Ryan?
Aaron, I'm wondering if you could expand on the red flag
Sure.
threat and whether the inner basin, for instance, also is in jeopardy.
So yes, the inner basin is a threatened value at risk right now. That is the #1 watershed, and definitely for the city of Flagstaff, for our community here. That is very much threatened right now. The consequence of intense fire through that, as we saw in the Schultz fire, can mean later flooding for our community, can mean compromising of water quality in our community. There's definitely consequences of that happening. So when we talk about where we commit resources, where we ask people to assume risk on behalf of this community, we try to prioritize that. That is a high priority. There are going to be lots of folks that are going to be taking a high risk for a high benefit in that area. I won't get into the specifics of what the incoming Type 2 team has, their plans in the future. However, we recognize the importance, both ecologically, socioeconomically, to our community of that watershed.
And also, following up, we're looking at obvious post-fire flooding dangers. It's pretty clear that the fire has burned up the east-facing sides of Doyle and Fremont.
That's right, Ryan.
Just from looking at the maps.
That's right.
What kind of post-fire flooding are we looking at, and where?
I'm not a hydrologist. I'm a firefighter. However, we have a sample set. Okay, we have a sample set. A lot of that's going to be based on fire severity. A lot of it's going to be based on really how intensely that fire burned, whether there's still enough material on the ground to impede the flow that's coming off of that burn scar. That's really the best I can do, Ryan.
Is there any idea of how fire severity at this point?
You know, because there's not a lot of fire history, and what I mean by that is this area hasn't burned in a long time. There's a lot of stuff on the ground. That doesn't mean that all of this, all the trees are gone. It doesn't mean that everything got burned up. It just means it's a long time since anything's burned. So a poor judgment of fire severity is how much smoke is produced. The best way to do that is with scientific methods, primarily satellite imagery, some of the laser technology that we use to actually measure the vegetation afterward, and that rolls right into the hydrological side of things, really how those folks work their magic and come up with things like flood severity reports.
3-5, did you have something? No? Okay, Felicia.
Hi, Felicia at the Associated Press.
Hi, Felicia.
Because we know the tunnel fire was so not very long ago, can you talk about how that is in comparison in terms of how fast is the fire moving? Are there more communities threatened than the tunnel fire? And just the complexity of the geography and the path of this fire versus tunnel?
So fairly similar trajectory, okay? And again, the same communities are impacted. Exactly the same communities are impacted. So a lot of similarities there. There are some differences. The biggest difference being the Kachina Peak Wilderness now impacted by fire, not just the Cinder Hills, not just Sunset Crater. So a definite increase in complexity from a lot of different standpoints. I was kind of amazed by the numbers when the sheriff was going through the evacuation, that we ordered the evacuation of over 2,000 households. I really, truly hope that every single person in one of those 2,000 households understand that their well-being is the #1 thing on our mind.
And yesterday there was a figure given of a 15-mile run for the fire. How are you guys confident that was the distance that the fire took yesterday, or maybe a little
Let me
less?
take that.
Okay.
That was my fault.
Okay, sure.
So the 15-mile run was an error on my part. It was probably more so around an 8-mile run. As you know, if you're looking on InsuWeb, the map and the boundaries of the tunnel fire still exist. We are trying to get that removed right now because we were getting confused with the run that was coming from the pipeline fire going into the tunnel fire, which appeared to be 15 miles. So it's kind of the fog of war when a fire is brand new and things are happening quickly, so it was my error to make that measurement. It was probably more so around 7 miles or so, so that was an error.
And then just the last thing, are the resources that are being requested for this being fulfilled given the other fires that are happening around the west?
Yes, for the most part they are, yes. Understand that there's always a competition for resources. As of this afternoon, this fire is the #1 national prioritized fire, so #1 in the nation for resources. The folks at the Forest Service and our cooperators at both the regional and the national level are working very hard to allocate resources based on need and complexity. We've gotten, last report, we had 8 more Type 1 interagency hotshot crews that have been assigned to the fire that are en route. We have a Type 1 incident management team that has been ordered and is coming. We are priority for all aircraft, at least in the region, if not the nation, when we can fly. We have lots of outstanding orders for all kinds of equipment and support that are being, lots of folks working real hard to fill those right now.
In the back there in the blue?
Have any structures burned? I spoke to some evacuees earlier and they said they saw structures going up in flames.
What's your name?
Taylor Tonsberg with
Taylor.
KPR.
Yes, as of right now, 1 confirmed structural loss.
And how many acres have burned total?
So that kind of snapshot of acreage right now is almost worthless because this thing is continuing to burn. We can't get an accurate right now acreage because it's moving. Last report that we had to the National Management Group was over 5,000 acres, and it has continued to grow throughout the day on that.
Yeah, Channel 10.
Yeah, Stephanie with Fox 10. What's the, average mile per hour wind speed that has to ground planes? Is it 35, 40 miles per hour? And, how troublesome is that? I know you said there's a way you can work around that, but not being able to get the accurate acreage and not being able to, just have the air tankers drop fire retardant, how difficult is that?
So again, I'm not an air guy. I'll give you my professional opinion here. It's really whatever the pilots say, okay? They are in charge of that aircraft. We have a lot of coordination in the air with that. We do not want to endanger those flight crews. So again, there's always going to be guys on the ground, always. There might not be guys in the air. So there's still work getting done, even if there aren't planes flying.
Okay, Michael, did you have, or actually Sean, did you have?
Yes, because Sean Goulet with
Sean,
Daily Sun.
thank you.
Because this fire appears to be following the trajectory of the tunnel fire, can you clarify whether or not it has crossed into that burn scar, and if so, how it is interacting with the previously burned area?
Sure. It did. So 6 weeks ago, tunnel fire came through, and fairly intensely where it crossed. And what it did was it fried all those trees. And a lot of those pine needles have fallen to the ground. So there's a new bed of fuel on the ground that's actually supporting some fire growth, okay? Unexpected, I'll tell you that, unexpected. Certainly not out of the realm of possibility. We did not expect that kind of growth, but again, with the condition of the fuels and the winds today, any combustible material out there was burning. And it was interesting to see that, for sure.
So following up,
Yeah.
how would you describe the level of fuel available within the tunnel fire scar?
Not much, not much. I think that instance is a fairly isolated instance. We could see that around other places in the tunnel fire. However, for the most part, it's not going to carry the same intensity through the tunnel fire as it did when it originally burned, for sure. Does that make sense? There's just less stuff to burn.
Yes.
Okay.
Dave?
With a crazy hectic day like today was with the winds and everything, and how active this fire is, can you lock in on what maybe was a most important area of this fire? Was it still timberland, or was there other areas that had your attention to today, or just kind of chaos?
Everything had our attention today, Dave. Everything had our attention. But again, try to prioritize that. Try to work through a risk management process that we can identify those values. Try to be most successful at. And it was primarily the structures. Of course, we kept an eye on everything moving up into the wilderness, but it was primarily the folks down here in the evacuation orders.
One quick follow. Did the previous burn scars you mentioned, tunnel, Schultz, maybe even radio in a little bit, and museum, those kind of help matters, as far as planning and getting through some areas, and did it help kind of with some fire control, having those burn scars in that area?
In places, those fire scars, stuff grows back after those fire scars. Typically, especially in the Schultz fire, we had a complete fuel model change. Anyone who lives here knows that. It went from standing timber to grass. Grass moves a lot faster. Fire and grass moves a lot faster. So when those fuel model changes, that can hinder us. With stuff like the tunnel fire that burned fairly hot, with the exception of some isolated pockets, that can help us. So there's kind of a lifespan to the viability of being able to use those fires as control features, Dave.
Okay, we'll just take one last question back there.
Yeah, I wanted to see if any watersheds have been destroyed.
Well, all of this is a watershed. It's kind of continued watershed. So certainly been impacted and will continue to be destroyed. There's going to be impacts.
And then assessment for flooding risk.
Again, I'm not in a position to say that.
This meeting wasn't available to the public like the tunnel fire was. Is there a reason for that?
Well, there'll likely be a public meeting tomorrow, but we just wanted to use this and the space we had that was limited to be able to get this information out.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up with Aaron, and then he'll be around after this all concludes just for some one-on-ones if you need it. Did you have any questions for the county, whether it's the Sheriff's Office or Coconino County Board of Supervisors? Yes.
I had a question for the sheriff.
Sure.
Taylor Thompson with KTAR. There's a probable cause statement going around that the man who was arrested for the cause of the fire burned the toilet paper and that's what led to the fire. Can you confirm that this probable cause statement is authentic and that that is what it appears to be?
That was a probable cause statement that was filed today in federal court. This investigation is currently under the United States Forest Service. So other than the same thing I read in the newspaper that you did, that's what it did say.
What was the exact number on the homes evacuated on ghost eyes in the Timberland, or for the pipeline fire?
I just have a total. I can get you the breakdown of that.
The total?
The total is for the pipeline fire, the GO evacuation status was 2,195.
You said at one point in time.
You bet. And these are households, not individuals. For the pipeline fire, the GO evacuation status was 2,195.
Any other questions for the Sheriff's Office?
Felicia again from the AP. Do you have a number of people who again have decided to stay within the evacuation areas and start more patrols in those areas as people either fight fire on their own or?
Right. We don't have numbers, unfortunately, as we're doing the evacuations with a limited amount of people. It is a very quick process, and we can say that there are people that are still in the area and that have chosen to stay for different reasons. All right, thank you.
Any questions for Supervisor Horseman?
Yes. Jordan, again,
Good to see you.
I was to ask if work is paused on the post-museum fire mitigation sediment project, if any of that work was paused.
The work is ongoing and it's obviously a different set of people who are working on that, and that is going full steam ahead, and the mitigation is proceeding.
Any other questions? Alicia?
What's the general timeline for the county when it comes up with,
Sorry? Yes?
What's the general timeline for when the county comes up with an estimate and it can then present to the federal government for disaster declaration for instance?
Are you talking about our county declaration that we made?
Yes.
The county declaration was made because of the resources that we lost and what was happening within the county. It's not relying on the federal government. So it's our local declaration, the county's declaration.
And when was that? I'm sorry.
We actually, what time is it? It was about 4 hours ago.
Any last questions? Yeah, Sean.
Any additional mitigation expected as a result of this fire when it comes to flood mitigation or county land?
You know, we're going to have to wait for the assessment. At this point, everything we had done before after tunnel, we have to redo and we have to reassess. So at this point, we don't know. But we will find out, and once we do, we will start that process.
Thank you.
Any questions for Congressman O'Hara? Oh, go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, Sandy.
And we get questions all the time from the Water Department, and they have to ask. They're curious as to why after the tunnel fire, the forest, I don't think it was just the situation, but why would the forest close, knowing that the risks were so high? And here we are.
And obviously, that's not really a question to ask the county, since this is a Forest Service, and this is a Forest Service decision. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the Forest Service.
Sure. So we'll have James Pettis come up. He's the Coconino National Forest Fire Staff officer, and he can answer that.
Okay, hi everybody. Can you please repeat your question?
The question is, knowing how dry we are and the fire dangers are so high, and after the tunnel fires, it's so early in the season, why weren't the forests closed to help try to prevent this if they could?
Very good question. We get that a lot. So when we move in and out of restrictions and closures, it's a very collaborative effort. So we get with our partners, local, all the fire departments, police departments. We do a call once a week, every week. All the fire departments, we get the county on, sheriff's department, emergency management, and then the state, they have their representatives. And then we have all of our other forest partners, so the Kaibab National Forest and the Tonto and the Apache Sitgraves and the Prescott, and we really dissect all that. What we try to do is make it an objective process. So a lot of science and data go into it. And so what is dry, right? What does dry mean? Everybody has their own version of what dry is. So we come up with some measurements, modeling, taking measurements out in the forest on how dry the fuels actually are. And that gives us, put those into some criteria. We've got a set of 10 different criteria that we go off of that kind of point us in those directions. And then we make decisions as a group, or we make recommendations to the forest supervisors as a group. And so as we move through the spring, while you might get a fire like the tunnel, wind trumps everything, okay? You can get wind-driven fires all the way up until, you got snow on the ground. It happens all the time. Wind trumps everything, okay? When you get into climatology, wind is very difficult to predict. And as we move throughout these stages, stage 1 restrictions, stage 2 restrictions, and forest closures, we continue to look at those numbers, look at that modeling, and continue to have those conversations and move accordingly. I looked at the criteria before we came here. We still do not meet the criteria out on the ground for stage 3 or closures. We're getting there, and we're having conversations right now on what that looks like moving forward. So we'll get gathered together today with all of our partners, and we'll make a decision here real soon on whether we move to that next stage. But wind trumps everything, and it makes firefighting very difficult.
So it's still not dry. Because even in those parks, the meadows that were green never became green.
Yep.
They were brown. So it's a change that we're seeing in Rose Park, and we're kind of curious as to why that's not. It seems like it's plenty dry.
So usually what the driver is when you get to June is one of those benchmarks that we hit. We start getting enough days in the 80s. So that's starting to drive it. That's why we're starting to have those conversations right now today over closures. And so we'll make that decision here in the next couple of days, but I get what you're saying. This fire in particular, you could take the pipeline fire. Without that wind, I'm 100% sure we go up there and catch that, okay? Wind is the driver here. This is a wind-driven fire, not a fuels-driven fire. It's a wind-driven fire.
Thanks, Tim.
Sorry, Dave. To kind of tail off that, is personnel on the ground, is that one of those factors that kind of goes into that stage 3 of closure where maybe you don't have the manpower to maybe control a lot of that too?
Absolutely, that's a huge part of our criteria. So that science piece I was just talking about, that's only one of the items that we talk about in that criteria. And what you're alluding to, sir, is resource availability. And so we talk in mannerisms of PL levels or planning levels. And so we get to planning level 4 or 5 in this region. That means there's a lot of fires going on, which is a big resource drain. You need a lot of firefighters for 300,000 acre fires over in New Mexico. That takes a lot of horsepower, and so that is one of the driving factors, and it'll be a driver in our decision this week as well. It's because we get too many of these, you have a hard time even without the wind. So that's on the forefront of our minds.
course, there's an area closure, correct?
I'm sorry, what'd you
There's
say?
a temporary area closure?
Yeah, that's all an emergency closure area. And you know, and where this fire started, that is in a year-round camping and campfire ban area. So no one's allowed to camp in there or have a campfire at all 365 days. So, because we know the value of this, you know, everybody knows the value. Yeah, no campfires, I'm sorry. They can camp there, but no campfires 365 days, so.
Okay, do we have any questions for Congressman O'Halloran? Looks like you're off the hook, Congressman. Go ahead, Dave.
Congressman, we can go. Congressman, I know, we kind of had a run through this with the tunnel fire, you know, not too long ago.